pocket of discussion has to be infrastructure. There's a lot of talk about whether the PSU banks, which were anyways hit by a bunch of issues, would get hit further by problems or issues surrounding the power sector. That's been the fear in the markets whole of last week, and we've seen that play out in the session today as well. On the flip side, the order inflows for road construction companies has only gotten stronger. We've seen companies getting orders from small-sized orders to really large-sized orders across states as well, and that's actually a good sign. So much more to talk about with Mr. Vinayak Chatterjee of Feedback Infra. He needs no introduction. Their offerings are across energy, transportation, realty, and social infra. So he's got a view on a bunch of these topics. Let's get in the chairman and co-founder of Feedback Infra with us. Mr. Chatterjee, good morning. Thanks so much for taking the time out and speaking with us. This is Neeraj here. Actually, if I can just start off with a small development that happened over the weekend. This e-way bill implementation. I don't know if you have thoughts there or no, but let me try and take my chances. The common belief is that this will speed up transportation across the country. We've had tax experts though come in and say that if you just look at what their fears are about the power at the hands of certain people coming in to be true, then it may well not turn out to be the case. What are your individual thoughts? Would e-way bill turn out to be a bigger boon as opposed to a smaller bane?
Well, I am very, very positive about the e-way bill. There is no question. You see, today, nobody is complaining where in all international ports, when a ship comes in, the invoices and the bill of goods that are in the ship are sent by advance e-transfer to the various port authorities so that advanced processing can happen. So the whole world is moving to a situation where invoices are in e-format and they accompany the goods and also facilitate future processing. I mean, this is also a building block to future blockchain kind of situations where, a factory can plan to take goods inward receipt when it knows the movement of a truck through its e-way bill. So it's part of a larger movement of cleaning up fraud invoices, of cleaning up diversion of goods into different areas, cleaning up, logistics providers or truckers carrying goods illegally. So evidently this is a change that had to happen. There will be teething problems. GST has had teething problems. Everything has teething problems. That does not mean that you don't go ahead with a structural change which is in tune with changing times. So e-way bill is good. And I also understand that e-way bill is going to be linked to fast tags. All trucks now are required to carry that electronic instrument that will deduct the toll from the electronic gantries of the toll plaza. So the e-way bill is going to be linked to the fast tag, so you know exactly the truck movement, where it's going. And I welcome the move to make e-way bill part of making India a national market. And just to answer your point about powers that in the hands of states, today the powers of search and seizure and obstruction are immense at every state border, at every district border, at every naka. So what is it that you are adding to it? If at all you're going to be reducing the power of people who have unlimited powers to stop a truck today for any excuse or the other. So it's a good thing.
Okay. Having said that, will we have the infrastructure to be able to support this as well? And if 2018, despite the disruptions, is any indication, Mr. Chatterjee, the road awarding by NHAI seems to have gathered an uptick. At least the private companies which are gathering these orders or gaining these orders are saying so. What are your thoughts here? I mean, TOT, the response has been fabulous.
No, you look at the roads and highways program is a shining example of the art of the possible. As you yourself said in your starting remarks, the order books of road construction companies in the middle of 2014 was an all-time low of even a little less than 1x of their turnover. Today it is touching 3x. So you can see that the order books are in good shape, and that is resulting in derived demand for construction equipment. I believe demand for construction equipment is growing at a startling pace of 60 to 70% is the increase in demand. You can check this out with construction equipment manufacturers. There is a robust demand finally for cement. Steel is shaping up. So all the indices that lead to the conclusion that the sector is in good times is all there. They're all adding up. Over and above that, we have been complaining that PPP is dead, private capital is not coming in. Now 43 hybrid annuity road projects have reached financial closure. This is PPP. It may not be the old BOT format of the UPA government, but it is PPP. Private capital is coming in. And the recent TOT bid, where Macquarie won the bid with a 9,500 crore bid, far exceeding NHAI's own expectation of 6 to 7,000 crores, shows that foreign investors and Indian investors are very upbeat about the prospects of the road sector. So to answer your question, it is certainly an attractive sector. It is delivering well, and God bless the people who are leading this charge.
Actually, just on that point, I was reading your Twitter handle, Mr. Chatterjee, and you mentioned that this TOT bids, while Macquarie may have won the first bid, according to you, the real winner is NHAI. Why do you say so, one? And two, what would the difference be in kind of the IRRs that a company which is winning a TOT bid versus the erstwhile bids, if you have some sense here, if you have some thoughts here?
Look, on IRRs, I don't want to comment. That is, these bids are a complex model building of capex, periodic and regular capex, of expansion when traffic increases, of their own estimations of GDP growth and traffic. So I'm sure each bidder has his own expectation of capex, of IRR. It is not for me to comment on that. But the fact that people who are very, very intelligent players worldwide, Macquarie, Brookfield, these are all very, very seasoned investors. And the fact that they found it comfortable to bid in a range from 6,500, 7,000 up to 9,500 shows that they're, even with all the risk management, their expectations of IRR are sufficient to have crossed the hurdle rate for allowing their managements to bid. So I don't think IRR is any constraint. Why did I say that NHAI is the real winner? Because a TOT is a very complex bid. You're taking money up front and handing over a state-run brownfield utility, an operating project, with all the complexities across the next 20 to 30 years, and you have positioned it in a manner that people have found it comfortable to bid. And so it has taken a lot of doing, a lot of pre-bid meetings, a lot of homework with domestic and international investors to create a package that ultimately make it viable for private investors to bid. So that's stage one. And stage two, it is the resounding success of the bid, in a sense, vitiates NHAI's own policy of moving into asset recycling of brownfield assets. And they got a bid beyond their expectation. So in a sense, while Macquarie is clearly the winner amongst the bidders, in an overall context, it is NHAI which has, I think, emerged as a winner by proving a point that it can get significant, expert, world-class investments in operating assets. So that's really the reason.
Okay, one thought, Mr. Chatterjee, on companies that will be, and not really, I mean, I don't want to stock recommendation or anything, but the size of order books and the balance sheet strength that Indian companies have. I mean, 6 months ago, the conversation was that the orders will come out thick and fast. We have a Larsen & Toubro, which is a large player, and then a string of small players. And whether or not their balance sheets can really take on the increased order inflows. Now, we already know of the bulging order books that almost all the mid-sized corporates already have. What happens in 2018 and 2019 when the pace of ordering of NHAI picks up?
No, so why would you be worried about it? I think as you rightly said, the major participants, as you can see across these, there's funding coming in from the international investors. So they are not dependent on the Indian banking system, if that is your worry, that the banks are going to be shy of lending. Where will people find? I mean, if Macquarie is bid 7,500 crores, Macquarie has the necessary financial muscle to see that its TOT bid is sustained. Now, if you look at various other, in the middle of all this crisis, 43 hybrid annuity projects have got financial closure. So that is fact. Under the same stress of bankers and NBFCs and foreign funders and ECBs, they have reached financial closure. When a company, and really the robust growth is coming from the, as you rightly said, the mid-size, mid-cap construction companies. Their rise has been very, very positively startling, to say the capacities and the professionalism that they've built up. Many of them have IPO'd, and their balance sheets are sufficiently robust for them to access various modes of funding. It's not only restricted to PSU banks, I mean, they can get funding from overseas, they can get funding from NBFCs, they can get funding from public financial institutions, etc., etc. So, and once you have a definitive contract on hand, it makes an NHAI is standing behind it. I wouldn't worry about financial closure or the ability of these EPC companies to rise to the occasion to implement their projects on time. I wouldn't worry about it.
I mean, so again, I think the worry, if at all, stems from the past experience. You think this time around the tables are very, very different, right? Because
listen, the problem last time was because of BOT funding.
Right.
It was because of the build, operate, transfer model where you had to put in your own equity, right? Now we are talking about the push that is coming from public expenditure. It is coming from NHAI's EPC program, which is public expenditure for engineering, procurement and construction. It is not about the people putting equity. It is that equity model that created the problem. This one, you build, you reach a milestone, you get a payment from NHAI. On a hybrid annuity model, you reach a 6-month milestone, you get a check from NHAI. So we are not talking about the old model where there is substantive balance sheet risk of putting equity of these companies at risk in SPVs. Here, equity is not really at risk.
Okay, important distinctions thereof. Let's move, lanes a bit. One more point that you made very recently, Mr. Chatterjee, is the reverse electronic auction and supply tenders of all railway orders. I think if I read you correctly, you mentioned that this was, in a manner of speaking, a landmark of sorts. Would you care to explain why do you think so? Why this optimism?
You see, sector after sector had entrenched systems. I use the word entrenched in inverted commas. You can take your own reading of what that means. Vis-a-vis their purchase departments and their purchase procedures. The single word to describe much of it that happened in India in the past was a singular lack of transparency and a cozy relationship between purchase departments and suppliers. I think what Mr. Piyush Goyal started in the energy department, in the power sector, is he's now carrying forward to railways, which is reverse e-auctions. Now, all suppliers hate reverse auctions for rightful reasons, because they feel that psychologically people quote very low and it kills the sector and etc. etc. But reverse e-auction as a theoretical construct has nothing wrong with it. It just says, here I've opened it up transparently for people to see the screen and see what your competitors are bidding, instead of one closed envelope which doesn't give you the sense of participation in a market. So theoretically the construct of an e-auction there's nothing wrong with it. Now, if you have firms who are mature, I mean, you should have before you open up an e-auction to suppliers, you should first ensure that you have participants who are mature players in that sector, who understand business, who understand margins, who understand the pluses and minuses of what they're quoting. And once you've ensured that, then I suspect the government gets the best price. But frankly, Indian industry is not used to e-auctions and is therefore very unhappy and uncomfortable with e-auctions. I would like to say that it's a very, very major move towards disrupting existing entrenched relationships and having a completely new generation of a bidding parameter. So I think it's a very, very major cleanup of the railway procurement system.
But do you think that railways as a space, and CEO after CEO, year after year, has talked about how the capacities are probably there and they are not very large capacities, and still not getting enough orders at an adequate time and a regular interval as well? Can that change?
Look, you're really talking about wagon manufacturers, right?
Yes.
Now, it is true, because railways have historically always been short of funds. So they used to try and scramble and get from Indian Railway Finance Corporation or some other institution. The moment they had a little bit of pot of surplus money, they would give orders for wagon manufacturers. This created a chaotic, unprofessional and an unplanned system that virtually, in a sense, decimated that industry. That industry could not have any long-range planning. So I am with you that the railway system and the end result has been that India, I have done a major article on this, India has a very decrepit stock of rolling stock. First, the numbers are far less than what Indian Railways should have. Even the quality of that rolling stock is terrible. So you have wagon shortages, rake shortages, all kinds of stuff. So that sector has been managed very badly. But what I see now is an attempt to address that issue. by saying I'm going to give you 5-year perspective orders that will enable you to plan your capacities, that will give you a perspective of how you should do your production scheduling, how you should do your materials planning, how you can do forward purchases of materials that you need, and I'm going to do this on e-auction. So it is a first step towards far more professionalization of railway procurement, and specifically to your point of wagon procurement. Over and above issues of wagon procurement that go beyond e-auction, because the government today, the railway ministry, I understand, is encouraging and working on schemes to allow people to own their own wagons, industries. It is encouraging cement, steel, automobiles, etc., and pushing the envelope to having various sectors of the economy own their own wagons and rakes, which are very, very specialized in today's world. Each industry sector has a wagon requirement which is very specific to the loading, unloading and transportation requirements of that sector. So it is good that railways gradually moves to a system where it doesn't have to buy wagons on its own, but basically takes a charge from people who own their own wagons and take a charge for allowing them to move on its network. That's the model we should be moving towards.
Okay, we are out of time completely, Mr. Chatterjee, but I have to take one last view from you, a quick 30-second perspective. I know you probably haven't gone to the news completely, but the dedicated freight corridor deadlines have been extended from December 19 to September 2020. For such a large project, par for the course, you would reckon, some delays?
Well, par for the course, balance that against a pulling up of the bullet train project by 1 year. The schedules have been pulled up by 1 year. So balance the two, we are not so badly off.
Okay, great. Mr. Chatterjee, really appreciate you taking the time out and speaking with us today. There's buoyancy in your voice about this space, and that should be good news for the economy. Thanks so much for joining in today.
Thank you.